He buried his dog in the rain. The storm had been growing all afternoon, crawling across the horizon like a bruise spreading over the sky. By nightfall, it broke, heavy sheets of water crashing down on the earth, swallowing every sound, every trace of warmth. Daniel didn't wait for it to stop. He couldn't. He had already waited too long. The shovel was old, its wooden handle slick in his hands. Mud clung to his boots, pulling at his steps, as if the ground itself didn't want to let go. Each strike into the soil felt heavier than the last, not because of the mud, but because of what it meant. Max lay wrapped in an old blanket beside him, the same blanket Daniel used to throw over the couch when Max would curl up next to him on cold evenings. It still smelled faintly of dog shampoo and the faint sweetness of the pine-scented candles Daniel lit whenever the house felt too empty. But now, that scent mixed with the wet earth and the iron sting of rain. Daniel knelt, his knees sinking into the mud, and whispered, "You were the only one who stayed, buddy. The only one who never gave up on me." Thunder rumbled in the distance, deep and far away. He placed his hand on the blanket one last time. The fabric was already damp, clinging to the still shape beneath it. And then, with a kind of numb grace, Daniel began to fill the hole. Each shovel of dirt sounded final, a dull thud against the weight of goodbye. By the time the grave was covered, the storm had eased into a steady drizzle. Daniel stood there drenched, his breath visible in the cold night air. He whispered something again, though even he wasn't sure what it was. A prayer, maybe, or a promise. He left Max's collar around his neck. The small brass tag gleamed faintly under the rain, catching the light from the porch. Then he walked back inside, closing the door behind him with a slow, deliberate click. Inside, the silence pressed against him. No claws tapping against the floorboards, no low, sleepy sighs, no tail thumping against the couch when Daniel passed by. Just the empty hum of the refrigerator and the drip-drip of water from his coat hitting the tile. That night he didn't bother changing. He sat by the window watching the storm fade into mist and wondered if maybe the world was quieter now because something sacred had left it. When he finally closed his eyes, he saw Max running through the field behind the house, the way he used to, when the grass was tall and gold beneath the summer sun. Daniel smiled through the ache. It was a good memory. Maybe the last one he wanted to keep. The next morning, the world smelled clean. Too clean, like nothing had ever happened. The days that followed were slow, hollow. Daniel moved through them like a ghost. Coffee in the same mug, same route to the corner store, same empty glance at the leash still hanging by the door. He told himself it was just a routine, but it wasn't. It was a habit of grief, a ritual of remembering. By the third night, the rain had returned. Softer this time, a quiet drizzle tapping on the roof like a gentle heartbeat. Daniel sat on the couch, lights dimmed, the TV on mute. He wasn't really watching, just listening to the rhythm of the storm. And then, through the sound of rain, he heard it. 3 knocks. Soft, uneven, almost shy. He frowned, glancing toward the door. Maybe the wind, he thought, or a branch. Then it came again, 3 taps. This time slower, more deliberate. Daniel's stomach tightened. He stood, his bare feet cold against the floor. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. No one ever came here that late. He walked to the door, heart thudding in his chest. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. And then, a sound. A low, muffled whine, faint, trembling, unmistakable. Daniel froze. His hand hovered over the doorknob, breath caught in his throat. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." But then the whine came again. Louder. A bark followed, short, familiar, desperate. Daniel's pulse began to race. His fingers trembled as he turned the knob and opened the door. The wind swept in first, cold and sharp, and there, standing in the rain, was a dog. Golden fur, soaked to the skin, a blue collar hanging loose around its neck, the same brass tag that Daniel had seen glinting under the rain 3 nights ago. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The dog's eyes, brown, deep, gentle, stared up at him waiting. "Max?" Daniel whispered. The dog's tail gave one uncertain wag. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, rain running down his face, staring at the dog that shouldn't exist. It looked exactly like Max, same fur, same eyes, same collar. The brass tag clinked softly, that familiar tiny sound Daniel used to wake up to every morning. His voice broke when he whispered, "If this is a dream, don't wake me." The dog stepped forward and pressed its forehead against his. A quiet, gentle greeting. That small warmth shattered the wall Daniel had built inside himself. He dropped to his knees, hugging the animal with trembling arms. "Max," he sobbed, "you came back." The dog wagged his tail once, slow and calm, as if saying, "Yes, I did." Daniel opened the door wider. "Come in." The dog walked in like it had never left. He fetched a towel, rubbed the wet fur carefully, noticing every familiar scar, every mark time had left behind. Then he filled the old food bowl and watched the dog eat. Not greedy, not afraid, just peaceful. It was Max. Everything said it was Max. But deep down, Daniel couldn't breathe right. Something in him whispered that mercy never comes this way. That night, the house felt alive again. Claws tapping on wood, the soft sighs of a dog settling into his favorite corner of the couch. Daniel wanted to believe it, so he did. He fell asleep on the floor beside him, one hand resting on Max's back. The steady rise and fall of breathing was the only rhythm he trusted. When he woke at dawn, Max was sitting by the door, waiting. The same patient look, the same quiet loyalty. The morning light seemed softer, cleaner, like grief had loosened its grip on the house. But when Daniel followed Max outside, the feeling twisted. The dog walked straight to the oak tree, the place Daniel had buried him 3 nights ago. The earth was dark, smooth, damp with rain. Max lowered his head and pressed his nose against the soil, not digging, not whining, just still, like he remembered. Daniel whispered, "Come on, buddy." His voice barely a breath. The dog turned, pressed against his leg in silence, and together they went back inside. That night, Daniel lay awake, his hand resting on Max's fur. It was warm, real, alive. But beneath that warmth, he thought he felt something else. A slow rhythm, deep and hollow, like the earth itself breathing. The following morning, Daniel woke before dawn. The sky outside was still gray, the kind of light that doesn't belong to any hour, caught somewhere between night and the promise of day. The dog was lying at his feet, breathing slow, deep, peaceful. For a moment, Daniel let himself believe that everything was normal, that the past few days had just been a dream stitched together by loneliness and grief. But then the air in the room shifted. It wasn't cold exactly. It just felt thinner, like the space around them had forgotten how to breathe. The dog stirred, opened his eyes, looked straight at Daniel, and for the first time, Daniel felt a flicker of doubt. There was something in those eyes, something familiar, yes, but quieter, like looking into a reflection that doesn't quite follow you back. He reached out, brushing a hand through the dog's fur. It was soft, warm, real. The dog's tail thumped once, twice. Daniel smiled despite himself. "You hungry?" He went to the kitchen, filled the bowl, poured his coffee. But when he turned around, the dog was sitting in the hallway, staring toward the front door. It was the same way he used to sit when Daniel was about to leave for work, waiting, hoping, maybe even listening for something Daniel could never hear. "What is it, buddy?" he asked softly. The dog didn't move. His ears twitched once, then stilled. Outside, the world was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before rain, or after something has already happened. Daniel took a slow breath and walked toward the door. When he reached it, he hesitated. He thought he heard something, faint, rhythmic under the hum of the refrigerator and the soft drip from the sink. A scraping, like metal on earth. He swallowed hard and opened the door. Nothing, just the mist. The yard stretched out silent, the grass still damp from the night before. He stepped outside, barefoot, coffee still in his hand. The oak tree loomed in the distance, its trunk black against the fog. And from where he stood he could see it, a dark patch of soil that looked freshly turned. He blinked. That wasn't possible. He hadn't touched the grave since the night Max came back. The mug slipped from his hand and shattered against the porch. The sound broke the morning open, scattering the quiet. The dog barked once from behind him, sharp, alert. Then he came running out, tail down, ears pinned. He stopped at the edge of the yard, growled low. Daniel felt his heart thud painfully. "Max," he whispered. "What is it?" The dog didn't answer. He just stared toward the oak, muscles tense, nostrils flaring. Then he did something Daniel didn't expect. He stepped backward, one careful step at a time, until he was standing beside Daniel again. And when Daniel looked down, he saw it clearly. The tag, the brass tag around the dog's collar. It was clean. Too clean. Not a trace of dirt, not a single scratch from where it had hit the shovel that night. Daniel's breath caught. He could feel the rain starting again, soft, scattered, tapping gently at the porch roof. For a moment he thought he saw movement under the oak tree, a faint shifting of earth like the ground exhaled. He stepped forward. "Stay here," he told the dog, but Max, or the thing wearing Max's collar, didn't listen. He followed, paws silent on the wet ground. By the time they reached the tree, Daniel could see it clearly. The grave was disturbed. The soil was uneven, marked with prints, his maybe, or the dog's, or both. He knelt, pressed his hand against the earth. It was warm, and underneath that warmth, a hollow sound, like something had been there and then left. He looked back at the dog. The animal was watching him, calm now, tail still, eyes steady, as if waiting to see whether Daniel would understand. "Where did you go?" he whispered. The dog tilted his head slightly, the way Max always did when Daniel asked a question that wasn't really a command. Then softly the dog whined, a sound that wasn't pain but sorrow. Daniel stood shaking. The drizzle turned to steady rain. He looked down at his own hands, streaked with mud now, though he hadn't touched the soil for more than a second. He wiped them against his jeans, but the stain stayed. When they got back inside, the house felt wrong. The lights seemed dimmer, the shadows longer. Every sound echoed just a little too long, like the walls were hollowing out. He tried to call someone, anyone, but his phone had no signal. No Wi-Fi either. He stared at the no service icon, as if it could explain anything. He set the phone down, sat on the floor beside the dog and whispered, "I don't understand." The dog leaned his head against Daniel's leg. It was such a human gesture, patient, forgiving, that Daniel almost forgot to be afraid. That night, he dreamed again. He was standing in the rain, shovel in hand. The hole was half dug. The air smelled of iron and roots. But this time, when he looked down, there were two shapes under the oak, not one, and only one blanket. He woke gasping, the sound of his own breath loud in the dark. The dog was sitting upright beside him, watching. Its eyes glowed faintly, catching the thin slice of moonlight through the blinds. Daniel swallowed hard. "You're real," he whispered, as if saying it would make it true. "You're real." The dog's tail moved once, slow, uncertain, and then it lay back down. But even after sleep came again, Daniel's mind wouldn't let go of the sound from his dream. The shovel scraping against something solid, something that echoed, something that knocked back. Daniel didn't move for a long time. He couldn't. The brass tag swung back and forth outside the window, glinting faintly with each flicker of lightning. The motion was almost hypnotic, a soft metallic rhythm that seemed to echo inside his ribs. The dog sat beside him, silent, waiting. And Daniel, breathing shallow, whispered into the dim light, "That's not possible." He wanted to believe the wind had carried it, that it had fallen off the collar, that maybe it had just caught on a branch by chance. but the knot in his chest told him otherwise. Someone or something had hung it there. He turned back toward the dog. There was mud caked on the fur, drying now, forming faint ridges that looked almost like handprints. He swallowed hard and brushed his fingers through the fur, half afraid of what he might feel underneath. It was cold. Too cold. He pulled his hand back and stared at his fingers. They were trembling, his nails rimmed with damp soil. The dog lowered his head and leaned against Daniel's leg. A gentle, familiar gesture. But Daniel couldn't relax. The rhythm of it felt rehearsed, as if the creature beside him was remembering how to comfort him rather than feeling it. That night, the storm came back. Harder this time. Wind howled against the windows, bending the trees outside until they groaned. The power flickered once, twice, then died completely. The house sank into darkness. Daniel lit a candle and sat on the floor beside the couch. The dog lay nearby, eyes reflecting the flicker of flame like two small embers. The sound of the rain grew heavy, sharp, almost angry. It felt like the world was trying to wash something away. Daniel whispered, "If you're really here, Max, then tell me why." The dog lifted his head. The flickering light made shadows ripple across the room. Long, warped shapes that moved when nothing else did. For a moment, Daniel thought he saw another silhouette on the wall beside them. A tall, crooked figure standing just beyond the candlelight. He blinked, and it was gone. But then the dog growled, low, steady, deep. It was the sound of warning. Daniel froze. "What is it?" The dog's ears were pinned forward, his eyes fixed on the doorway that led to the hall. The fur along his back rose slowly, like static climbing up his spine. Daniel stood, heart pounding. He strained to listen. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, he heard it. Footsteps, slow, uneven, coming from the far end of the hall. He felt the blood drain from his face. No one else was supposed to be here. He whispered, "Hello?" No answer. Just another step. Closer this time. Then, silence. Daniel's breath caught. The candle flickered violently, flame bending toward the hallway like it was being pulled. The dog barked, one sharp sound that cut through the dark. And then, another sound came. 3 knocks. Not from the front door this time. From the basement. The sound came up through the floor. Dull, heavy, echoing. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel staggered backward, eyes wide. He could feel the vibrations through the wooden boards under his feet. He turned to the dog. "You hear that, right?" The dog didn't bark again. He just stood there staring at the floor, his head tilted slightly, his tail stiff. Then slowly he walked toward the basement door. Daniel's heart thudded so hard it hurt. No, stay here, Max. Don't." But the dog didn't listen. He pressed his nose to the door, whining softly. Then, with one gentle push, the door creaked open. A wave of cold air rolled out, carrying a damp, earthy smell. Daniel hesitated, candle trembling in his hand. The stairs below were nothing but a black descent into silence. The dog looked back at him once, as if asking him to follow, and then started down. Daniel's voice broke. "Wait." He followed, step by step, his free hand trailing the wall for balance. The candlelight quivered, casting pale shadows that reached far into the dark. Halfway down, he called again. "Max?" No response, just the soft pad of paws against concrete. When he reached the bottom, he saw the dog standing still in the middle of the room. Head down, ears forward. Daniel moved closer, lifting the candle. The basement was empty except for old boxes, a workbench, and the water heater. The air was thick with the smell of soil. He whispered, "What are you looking at?" Then he saw it. In the far corner, a dark spot spreading across the concrete floor. Mud, fresh, wet mud, and in the middle of it, a set of paw prints, leading not toward the stairs, but away from them. Daniel's throat tightened. His voice came out like sand. "How?" He turned back to the dog, But the dog was already moving, following the prints, sniffing, and as the candle flickered, Daniel noticed something on the far wall, a shape, a faint outline, darker than the rest. He stepped closer. The candlelight wavered across it, and his stomach lurched. It was a handprint, pressed deep into the concrete, long fingers, mud-caked, half-formed. And next to it, faint but visible, were claw marks. Daniel stumbled backward, the candlelight shaking wildly. No. No, no, no. The dog barked once sharply, and Daniel nearly dropped the candle. He turned, and in that brief flash of light, he saw something move in the farthest corner of the basement. A shape, low to the ground, still dripping. And for one horrible second, Daniel thought he recognized it, the same blue blanket, wrapped around something that moved. The candle sputtered out. The dark swallowed him whole. He could hear only two things now, the rain pounding against the house above them, and the slow, steady sound of breathing, not his own, in the dark. "Max," he whispered. No answer. Only another sound, a soft, wet scrape, like paws against concrete, moving closer. The next morning was bright. Too bright, the kind of morning that feels like it's pretending. Sunlight spilled across the floorboards, golden and soft, and for a second Daniel wanted to believe it, that everything was fine, that the last few days were just a cruel trick of exhaustion and grief. He reached down to touch the dog, still there, curled up on the rug, chest rising, and falling, warm to the touch, the same steady breath he'd listened to for 12 years. But when Daniel stood and looked closer, he saw something that turned his stomach cold. A faint smear of dirt across the dog's back, dry, like it had been there for days, and caught in the fur near the collar was a single wilted leaf, an oak leaf. He plucked it free with trembling fingers, staring at it like it might explain something. The dog opened his eyes, calm as ever, and stretched. He looked up at Daniel, tail brushing the floor softly. "Where were you last night?" Daniel whispered. The dog didn't move, didn't flinch, just blinked once, slow and patient, as if waiting for Daniel to catch up. For the first time since the night of the storm, Daniel felt fear, not of the dog, but of the quiet. That unbearable quiet that seemed to follow him now, no matter where he went. He brewed coffee, trying to drown his thoughts in routine. The smell of it filled the house, but it didn't feel like warmth anymore. It felt like pretending. He watched the dog move through the rooms, padding softly from corner to corner, not sniffing, not exploring, but tracing a path. The same one Max used to walk when he was restless. The same one Daniel had walked himself, night after burying him. By noon the rain started again, thin, whispering rain that didn't belong to any storm. Daniel sat by the window watching droplets trace lines down the glass. The dog lay nearby, head resting on his paws. For a moment, Daniel thought about opening the window, just to let the rain in, to feel something pure. Then he saw it. Out by the oak tree. A shadow. Someone, or something, standing beside the grave. Daniel's chest went tight. He blinked hard, thinking it might be a trick of light, but the shadow didn't move. He stood slowly, careful not to make a sound. The dog's ears perked up, following his gaze. Then, without a sound, the dog stood too. They looked at each other for a long moment, man and animal, bound by something neither understood. And then Daniel whispered, "Stay." He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The rain met him halfway, cold and soft. He walked slowly toward the oak, his shoes sinking into the wet grass. Every step felt heavier than the one before. When he reached the grave, the shadow was gone. Only the tree stood there, tall, silent, dripping. But something else was waiting. In the center of the mound lay a small object half buried in the mud. Daniel knelt and brushed it off with shaking hands. It was a photograph, old, creased, blurred at the edges from water. But he knew it instantly. It was a picture of him and Max, taken years ago, The day he brought him home from the shelter. Max was a puppy then, golden and bright, and Daniel's smile looked different, untouched by the years that would come. But something in the picture made him freeze. There was a faint shadow behind them. Faint, human-shaped. But the photo had been taken inside his house. He remembered that day. There had been no one else there. He stared at it, heart pounding. Then he turned, scanning the yard. Nothing but the sound of rain. He looked down again, and the photo was gone. Just gone. Mud where it had been. He stumbled back, breathing hard. For a moment, he thought he saw movement at the edge of the woods, just beyond where the light faded into gray. A figure, still. Watching. "Who's there?" he called out, voice breaking. No answer, just the soft patter of rain against leaves. Then, from the direction of the house, a sound that froze his blood. 3 knocks, slow, hollow, on the inside of the door. Daniel's breath hitched. The dog was inside. He ran, mud splashing against his legs, and reached the porch just as the 3rd knock echoed again. He stopped, chest heaving. The door was closed. The house was quiet. He pushed it open. Inside, the dog sat in the hallway, still, calm, watching him. Daniel's voice came out hoarse. "Was that you?" The dog tilted his head. But behind him, down the hallway, something dripped. A slow, rhythmic sound. Water, maybe, or something else. Daniel walked forward, following it. Each step creaked louder than the last. The sound led him to the kitchen, and there, on the tile, was a puddle. But it wasn't water. It was mud. Dark, thick, fresh. And in the center of it, paw prints, leading toward the back door. Daniel's hands trembled. No, 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 no. He turned. The dog was behind him now, standing in the doorway. Mud on his paws, rain dripping from his fur. "Where did you go?" Daniel whispered. His voice cracked halfway through. The dog just stood there, watching. Then, slowly, he walked forward, each step leaving another wet print on the tile. He stopped in front of Daniel and sat. And for the first time since he'd come back, Daniel noticed it. The tag on the collar was gone, the little brass tag that had hung there since the day he buried him. Daniel dropped to his knees, gripping the dog's face gently. "Where is it? Where's your tag?" The dog's eyes didn't leave his. Calm, deep, endless. And then with the smallest tilt of his head, he looked toward the window. Daniel followed his gaze and saw it. Out by the oak tree. Hanging from a low branch, turning slowly in the rain, was the brass tag, swinging back and forth, catching the light like a signal, or a warning. Daniel stood frozen in the dark, the air thick and damp around him. He could smell the earth, fresh, wet, alive in a way that made his skin crawl. Somewhere close, something was breathing. Slow, deliberate, uneven. It wasn't the sound of fear or pain. It was the sound of something that belonged there, something that had come home. His hand trembled as he reached out blindly, searching for the wall, for anything solid. But the moment his fingers brushed against cold concrete, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. He whispered, "Max, please, buddy, if that's you, just come here." His voice barely made it past his throat. The dark felt heavy, pressing against his chest. Then, faintly, he heard it again. Paws against the floor, slow and wet, moving closer. The air shifted, cooler now, and he could almost feel the space between them narrow. He fumbled for his lighter, the one he kept in his jacket, a habit from years ago, and with a trembling thumb sparked it. A small flame flared to life, trembling in the stale air. For an instant he saw the shape in front of him. It was the dog, or at least it looked like him. Max stood a few feet away, eyes catching the light, fur matted with mud and water dripping steadily onto the floor. But his paws, Daniel's stomach turned. They weren't clean. They were raw, as if he had been digging through something that refused to let go. "Oh my God," Daniel whispered. He crouched slowly, holding the lighter higher. What did you do, Max? The dog's tail gave one uncertain wag, almost apologetic. Then he sat. The sound of the rain above had grown distant now, muffled by the walls around them, and for a strange moment, Daniel felt like the world outside had stopped. Only him, the flame, and the thing wearing his dog's face. The lighter flickered, its flame shrinking, struggling to stay alive. Daniel whispered, "You shouldn't be here, you were gone. I buried you." His voice cracked, and his knees nearly gave out. "I put you in the ground." The dog tilted his head, a motion so familiar it broke something inside him. But there was something else in the eyes now, something colder. Not hate, not hunger, just distance, the kind of distance that no living creature carries. The lighter went out. The dark came back in an instant, swallowing everything. He gasped and stumbled backward, his hand brushing against the workbench behind him. His fingers found a flashlight, old and heavy, the metal cold against his palm. He clicked it on and a beam of white light cut through the darkness. The basement was empty. No dog, no sound, only the slick pattern of paw prints leading toward the far wall, and stopping. He followed the trail with the flashlight, his chest tight, the beam trembling as it moved. The prints ended at the concrete, not at the stairs, not at the door, just there, against the wall. He reached out, pressed his hand against it. It was cold and damp, but it gave, just slightly, like there was something hollow behind it. And then he heard it again. The knock. 3 soft, steady taps. But this time it wasn't coming from behind him. It was coming from inside the wall. He stumbled back, the flashlight shaking violently in his grip. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The knocking came again, harder now, desperate. And beneath it, faint but real, a sound like claws scratching at the other side. His heart pounded so loud it hurt. The dog's name tore out of his mouth before he could stop it. "Max!" The scratching stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, from the corner of the room, he heard soft footsteps again. He turned the light. The dog was there, standing right behind him. Daniel gasped, falling backward onto the floor, the flashlight clattering away. The beam rolled across the room, stopping at the blue blanket in the far corner. It was moving, rising and falling, like something beneath it was breathing. Daniel crawled toward it without realizing, drawn by something between terror and love. His voice broke when he whispered, "Please don't make me look." But his hands were already reaching. He pulled the edge of the blanket back and froze. Beneath it was a shape. Still fragile, unmistakably his dog. The same collar, the same tag, muddy but real, Max. Unmoving, lifeless. Daniel's vision blurred, his stomach clenched. He turned toward the other dog, the one standing near the wall, and whispered, "What are you?" The dog stepped closer, its eyes reflecting the faint, dying beam of the flashlight. And for the first time, Daniel saw what was wrong. There was no reflection in them, no light. Just depth, endless and black. "You shouldn't be here," he said, tears burning his eyes. "I don't know what you are, but you shouldn't be here." The dog tilted its head, then looked toward the stairs as if expecting him to follow. It took one step, then another. And then it stopped, turning its gaze back to the covered body. Daniel's voice was barely a breath. "You came back." The dog blinked slowly. Then it turned and began to climb the stairs, each step echoing with a dull, hollow sound that didn't match the rhythm of paws. When Daniel finally gathered the courage to follow, he found the basement door open. The rain had stopped. The world above was still. But when he reached the top step and turned on the light, the hallway was empty. No sign of the dog. Only mud. Fresh, wet prints leading down the hall, stopping at the front door. The same door that had first knocked 3 nights ago. Daniel stood at the top of the stairs, the light above flickering weakly, his breath shaking. The mud prints on the floor led straight to the front door, each one darker than the last, each one carrying the shape of something real, but wrong. the kind of wrong that the mind refuses to name. He followed them slowly, barefoot, the wood creaking beneath him. The house was silent again. Too silent, as if sound itself was afraid to stay. When he reached the door, he stopped. The handle was wet. He hesitated, then whispered, "Max, if you're out there, please tell me what you want." His voice cracked on the last word. The silence on the other side was total. No wind, no rain, no life. He took a breath and turned the handle. The door opened to the night. The sky was gray, heavy with mist, the oak tree stretching tall and still against it. The earth beneath it was darker than before, uneven. He could see the grave even from here, freshly turned again. The mound was smaller now, flatter, as if something had pressed it down from within, and there, hanging from the lowest branch, was the brass tag. It was still swinging, though there was no wind. He stepped outside, barefoot on the wet ground, the air biting cold against his skin. Every instinct screamed for him to stop, but something stronger, something he couldn't name, pulled him forward. The tag clinked softly as it turned, catching faint light from the porch behind him. When he reached the oak, he saw that the soil was split open slightly, a crack running along the edge like a wound that refused to close. He knelt, his fingers trembling as he reached for the tag. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly against his skin, as if it remembered a heartbeat. He looked down, whispering, "I'm sorry, I should have stayed with you." The air around him seemed to tighten, the mist pulling in closer. From somewhere behind him came the sound of paws, slow, deliberate, approaching through the wet grass. He turned, heart hammering, and there he was again. The dog, mud to his chest, eyes deep and calm, breathing steady. Daniel stared at him, tears already spilling down his cheeks. "Why did you come back?" he asked. The dog stopped a few feet away, head slightly lowered, tail still. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, until finally the dog took one step forward and looked toward the oak, toward the broken earth. Daniel followed his gaze, and in that instant he understood. It hadn't come back for itself. It had come back for him. For the part of him that never left that night, still kneeling in the rain, still digging through mud and grief, still whispering goodbye. The dog gave a soft whine and turned back toward the woods, pausing once to look over its shoulder. Daniel's breath hitched. "You're not supposed to stay, are you?" The wind stirred at last, carrying the faint scent of pine and wet earth. The dog blinked once, slow, and then he walked into the mist. Each step grew quieter until the sound was gone completely. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring at the space where the figure had disappeared, the brass tag still clutched in his hand. When he finally looked down, he saw it. The prints leading away from the oak fading one by one, dissolving into the soft soil until nothing remained. He whispered into the night, "Goodbye, buddy." A single tear rolled down his cheek, mixing with the mist on his skin. He turned back toward the house, and when he reached the porch, he stopped. The door was open. Inside, the house was still, but on the floor by the window where Max used to sleep lay the blue blanket, dry now, clean, folded neatly. On top of it rested something small and golden, the tag. He looked down at the one in his hand. It was gone. He swallowed hard, his breath catching, and for a moment he thought he heard it. Soft, distant, impossible. The sound of paws against the floor, moving from room to room the way Max used to wander at night when the rain was gentle and the world felt safe. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He just closed the door softly, leaned his forehead against it, and whispered, "Rest now." Outside, the rain began again, steady, endless, but softer this time, as if the world itself was finally at peace. And for the first time in days, the house no longer felt empty. Somewhere between silence and memory, a life had found its way home. If this story moved you in any way, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. It really helps.